In this video, we're going to be discussing the topic of phishing attacks. Within that, I'll be discussing the vulnerability that small business owners and employees have on becoming victim to this, what phishing looks like, and why it is a threat, and lastly, the risk management recommendations to lessen the success rate of these attacks. Although this video and topic is applicable to all employees of the organization, the owners and high-level employees are the primary focus due to the smaller size of the business. Additionally, this video is useful for employees whether they are new to the restaurant or have been employed for some time. This video is also valuable in that it will educate employees on this topic, increase awareness and prevention, and also supply further recommendations to consider. To some extent, everyone is receiving emails from their employment, whether that is in regard to scheduling, training, or updates and company guidelines, to just name a few. Oftentimes, these emails can also contain personal information, especially during the onboarding process of a new employee. Therefore, it allows for personalization in the email to further the opportunity where an email might look valid but actually have malicious code attached. However, a training introduction to this topic may help prevent this incident from taking place. Additionally, it can create better situational awareness while also giving insight as to what a phishing attack looks like. Attacks such as these remain to be prevalent today because they are successful, and this reaffirms the need to discuss this topic. Additionally, this video is beneficial for the leadership of the restaurant. Oftentimes in small organizations, such as a local restaurant, the owners or high-ranking employees, such as managers, serve as the main points of contact for business operations. Those conversations can take place in a variety of ways, including in person, over the phone, or through emails. Due to that, it means these individuals can be utilizing the same and/or login information for numerous websites, and their inbox likely has a much higher rate of email traffic. Therefore, these individuals will likely benefit the most from the recommendations and discussion within this video. To begin, we're going to briefly answer the question of what the terms phishing and business email compromise mean and what they look like. Phishing is a technique that is used to gain access to desired information through gaps in policy, which is successfully completed over the computer, such as through an email, and this remains to still be the most common form of phishing. The goal in doing this can be to either gather information on a particular individual, on the business operations, such as locating financial information, or to find access to logins for other databases or websites. In these phishing attempts, the sender becomes extremely skilled in how they formulate the email and the information they choose to include. Oftentimes, the individual will feel a time constraint and the pressure to take action immediately, but it is important to understand that that is one of the methods specifically used for this type of attack. This can also be used as one of the first clues in acknowledging it is a phishing email. Other signs of this form of attack is when the sender is pretending to be someone you may know, which for a restaurant business, this could appear to be a vendor. Next, it is the term business email compromise, also abbreviated to be BEC. And this is used for email attacks specifically in relation to businesses, which can be both small or large. The goal for this form of attack is different than a typical email phishing, in that it targets employees by appearing to be a leader within the business by using a company email address. In instances such as this, the recipient will be pressured into taking certain actions due to the request of the email, such as an immediate transaction or transfer of funds. Due to the time constraint on an action such as this, the incident must be deleted fairly quickly, which makes this type of phishing attack important to recognize. Both of these techniques pose a threat to individuals and businesses because they are used to locate and access valuable data. At times, this may result in damage for the organization, such as financial hardship, a damaged reputation, or even the loss in the business value. This knowledge allows for leadership and businesses to establish the first line of defense when protecting against attacks such as phishing. Although there may not be solutions for complete protection against these attacks, there are ways to increase the security and lessen the likelihood of an incident from taking place. One of the leading recommendations for doing so is by implementing training within the business, which can be inclusive for both the leadership and the employees of the restaurant. The overall goal of training, both initially as a new employee and regularly as a continued employee, is to increase the situational awareness on this topic. The National Institute of Standards and Technology, otherwise known as NIST, framework outlines 5 core functions which aims to address and manage cybersecurity risk, and the function awareness and training is one of the categories dedicated to achieving protection. This helps ensure the employees and leadership of the organization are informed on their role and the responsibility their position entails. There are many other recommendations that businesses can utilize in addition to training, one of which is to ensure the correct policies and procedures are in place for the business's needs and its operations. In relation to phishing attacks, it is important for the restaurant to ensure they've established and implemented policies which outline the acceptable use of communication measures such as email. The policies in place should also address what actions need to be taken when an individual receives an email that may seem suspicious. Those actions may include who the employee should contact in order to verify the validity or how to report the incident. For example, if a manager receives the email which appears to be from a vendor for the restaurant, but the information within the email seems unusual. If this were to take place, the manager should be well educated on how to handle the situation and who they should contact in order to resolve the incident. Once the business has established the policies and procedures in regard to phishing, it is important these are also reviewed throughout the year to ensure they are operating and protecting the business as intended. Along with previous recommendations, an additional one is to develop an incident response plan. This plan would include specific procedures in the case a phishing attack occurs. This will aid in reducing any damage to the organization should an individual fall vulnerable and the attack become successful. There are many different routes a company can take when creating this response plan, and it can be catered to their specific needs, such as what actions to take depending on the individual's role in the restaurant. Typically, the incident response process will consist of multiple steps, which will walk the business through the response process. One resource for guidance on this is the National Institute of Standards and Technology Framework, which is a publicly available resource. Lastly, should an incident occur in regard to phishing attacks, it is in the best interest of the business to utilize lessons learned. Essentially, this is a process that organizations use to reflect on the incident in hindsight. It allows for discussion to take place on what the business may need to focus on and which part of the incident response plan may have suffered compared to others. For an incident such as a phishing attack, it would also allow for the leadership to understand what part of the attack left the individual vulnerable, so it can be addressed for future guidance and the ability to reflect on how the response was handled. The last recommendation for protecting against successful phishing attacks is to reflect on the culture of the business. As a small business, the lower level employees are more likely to be engaged with their leadership, whether that is the general manager of the business or the owners themselves, compared to a larger organization. In return, that can directly impact the culture on a day-to-day basis. In a study conducted, it was found that the job performance of employees had a significant increase when the work culture encompassed openness, confrontation, trust, authenticity, proactivity, autonomy, collaboration, experimentation. This further supports how culture can play a role in overall performance of the employees and how well they complete their duties. By being aware of this fact, it can benefit the company when trying to protect against attacks such as phishing. This is because by acknowledging what the climate of the culture is within the organization, it can aid in understanding the level of trust amongst the employees. If the work culture supports the key elements as mentioned above, such as trust and openness, employees may feel comfortable when asking for guidance if they receive a suspicious email, which may make a large difference in the recovery process of incidents. An example could be when implementing and discussing an incident response plan. If an employee does not fully understand their role and responsibility but does not have trust within the leadership, it may result in poor performance. This supports why the culture of the business is an important aspect to focus on. As we wrap up this discussion on phishing attacks, there are a few key points that are also important to acknowledge. There are always going to be individuals creating newer and better phishing techniques, which means there is never going to be a foolproof system, and phishing attacks will likely take place. Therefore, a company must learn how to lessen the success rate through both awareness and training. Policies and procedures for cybersecurity are not always a one-size-fits-all method, so it is important to understand and acknowledge all of the options at hand. Additionally, it's important to train and create better situational awareness to phishing and business email compromise for employees while emphasizing it to those in leadership roles. By taking the time to do so, it can better help improve the organization's adaptability and aim to limit any financial or reputational damage should an incident occur. Hopefully after this video, you're able to walk away with a better understanding of how both the employees and small business owners share vulnerability to phishing attacks, as well as why these attacks do pose a threat and a few recommendations to lessen the success rate.